You finally sit down, the work is done, the chores are finished, and a moment of quiet stretches before you. But instead of peace, a familiar, uncomfortable feeling creeps in. A low hum of guilt. You feel like you're getting away with something. Like you're shirking a duty no one named, but everyone feels. This isn't laziness. It's a psychological phenomenon. A deep-seated conviction that your worth is tied to your productivity. Rest feels like a crime because we've been conditioned to believe that our value is a transaction. Something to be earned through constant doing. In a world that worships hustle, stillness has become a radical, and for many, a guilty act. Let's unpack why the simple, human act of rest feels so fraught, and how this guilt is manufactured in our minds. From our earliest years, we are taught that our place in the world is earned. Good grades earn praise, completed chores earn allowance, and later, work hours earn a salary. Our sense of worth becomes entangled with a system of exchange. Rest, by its very nature, is non-transactional. It produces no obvious output, generates no revenue, and completes no checklist. In an internal economy where value is currency, rest feels like bankruptcy, like you are spending precious time without making a deposit. The guilt is the alarm bell of this internal accountant, screaming that you are depleting your account of worth. You haven't learned to see your own humanity as an asset that appreciates with rest. You see it as a machine that depreciates when idle. The guilt doesn't spring from nowhere. It's an ancient ghost in our cultural machinery. The Puritan work ethic, a cornerstone of modern Western thought, championed hard work not just for survival, but as a moral virtue and a sign of divine favor. Idleness was seen as sinful, a doorway to temptation and moral decay. While we may no longer hold the religious dogma, the moral framework remains deeply embedded. To rest is to be idle, and idleness feels inherently suspect. A character flaw. This historical echo transforms your Sunday nap from a biological need into a quiet moral failing. The guilt is the lingering whisper of a centuries-old sermon, telling you that a good person is always productively occupied. Look around, and you'll see busyness worn as a badge of honor. "I'm so swamped" is a common boast, signaling importance and purpose. In this social landscape, rest has no marketing department. To admit you are doing nothing feels like admitting you are unimportant, irrelevant, or falling behind. The guilt you feel when resting is, in part, social anxiety. You are opting out of the performance. While others are visibly producing, achieving, and climbing, your stillness feels like a public confession of inadequacy. You're breaking an unspoken social contract that says we must all appear tirelessly in motion, and the guilt is the fear of being judged for your lapse in the performance. Rest requires trust. Trust that the world won't leave you behind while you pause. In a culture of breakneck pace and constant comparison, that trust is shattered. The moment you stop, your mind projects a terrifying future where competitors advance, opportunities vanish, and your skills atrophy. Rest isn't seen as recovery. It's seen as regression. The guilt is the avatar of this fear. It's not just about what you're not doing now. It's the panic about all you'll have to do later to catch up. This turns rest into a psychological debt, with guilt as the punishing interest. You can't enjoy the present because you're already anxiously paying off the future you imagine your rest is creating. Your mind has been colonized by a profit and loss statement. This is internalized capitalism, where you apply market logic to your very existence. Every minute must be leveraged for maximum return, whether in money, skill building, or domestic output. Rest shows up on this mental spreadsheet as a loss, a cost with no clear ROI. The guilt is your inner CEO's disapproval of poor time management. You feel you are squandering shareholder value in the corporation of you. This mindset makes it impossible to see rest as an essential infrastructure investment, the maintenance required for the entire operation to thrive. Instead, it's a line item to be minimized, and enjoying it feels like embezzlement from your own potential. For many, the blueprint for guilt was drawn in childhood. Love and approval were often tied to performance, to being good, which meant being quiet, helpful, or achieving. Rest, especially playful, unstructured rest, might have been met with irritation or withdrawal. You learned, deep in your nervous system, that to be loved is to be productive. Now, as an adult, when you rest, that old neural pathway lights up, signaling a threat to belonging. The guilt is the emotional memory of conditional love, a fear that by stopping, you are making yourself unworthy of care, connection, and the fundamental safety that comes with it. You are resting, but your heart is waiting for a reprimand. For the perpetually busy, activity is more than productivity. It's a numbing agent, a distraction from unresolved emotions like grief, anger, or loneliness. When you finally stop, the silence you create isn't empty. It fills with everything you've been out. The guilt that seems to be about rest is often a smokescreen. It's a more acceptable feeling to latch onto than the raw sorrow or rage that bubbles up in the quiet. It's easier to think I shouldn't be lying here than to face the deeper truth of I am heartbroken and I don't know how to fix it. The guilt becomes a psychological scapegoat, a familiar discomfort that protects you from confronting the vast, uncharted emotional landscape that true stillness reveals. Underlying the guilt is a corrosive belief that your worth is a finite resource that you deplete through use. You must constantly replenish it with accomplishments to have any value at all. Rest, in this model, is the state of having zero worth. This is a profound error. Human worth is not a gas tank. It is the sky, inherent and limitless. The guilt you feel is the panic of the gauge hitting empty because you've been misreading the instrument your whole life. You are not a human doing whose value expires when action stops. You are a human being whose value is intrinsic, a constant state that requires no proof of purchase through perpetual labor. Social media has constructed a global stage where everyone is both performer and audience. You scroll through a curated feed of others, achievements, adventures, and hustle, a relentless highlight reel that makes your own quiet moment feel like a failure of content creation. Your rest occurs off-camera, in the unrecorded void, which the digital age subtly frames as non-existence. The guilt is the pressure of the invisible audience, the feeling that you are wasting a perfectly good opportunity to be seen as productive, interesting, or successful. You are not just resting, you are opting out of the broadcast. And in an attention-based economy that feels like a professional and social sin, the quiet couch becomes a director's chair for a movie you're failing to film about your own life. For generations raised by parents or grandparents who lived through economic depression, war, or profound scarcity, rest was not an option. It was a threat to survival. That survival level anxiety. The belief that security is perpetually tenuous and only constant labor can hold it together is passed down not through stories, but through nervous systems. The guilt you feel is a somatic inheritance. It's the echo of a loved one's genuine fear that stopping meant danger. Your body, carrying this legacy, interprets modern-day rest as a reckless gamble with safety. The stakes feel life or death, because once, for someone whose love shaped you, they truly were. We are taught to distinguish between needs and wants, with needs being essential and wants being indulgent. Rest, especially deep, playful, or luxurious rest, often gets miscategorized as a mere want, a selfish indulgence. Sleep is a grudgingly accepted need, but reading a novel, daydreaming, or taking a leisurely walk feels like a want. The guilt is the voice of a harsh inner critic, policing this distinction, telling you haven't earned the indulgence. This ignores a biological truth. The line between need and want is false for a thriving psyche. Creative rest, spiritual rest, and emotional rest are not luxuries. They are maintenance needs for a complex human system. The guilt is the pain of denying yourself a fundamental requirement for wholeness. At its core, the guilt you feel when resting is a profound failure of self-compassion. You are extending a kindness to yourself, the kindness of pause, and immediately meting out punishment for it. You would never begrudge a tired friend an afternoon off, yet you treat your own exhaustion with suspicion and scorn. This guilt is the language of a relationship at war with itself, where the driver is whipping the horse. The discomfort is the friction between your body's authentic need and your mind's tyrannical rule. Learning to rest without guilt isn't about time management. It's about identity repair. It's the practice of becoming someone who is allowed to be tired, to be human, to simply be, without needing to justify their existence through output. To rest without guilt is an act of rebellion. In a system that profits from your constant output and consumption, choosing to stop is a radical reclaiming of your own humanity. This isn't about luxury. It's about shifting your fundamental identity from a cog in a machine to a living being with inherent worth. Start by reframing rest, not as not doing, but as doing something essential. You are doing maintenance. You are doing integration. You are doing recovery. This is the work that makes all other work possible. Grant yourself explicit permission, verbally. Say, I am allowed to rest. The initial guilt may flare, like an alarm you're disabling, but by consistently choosing to interpret rest as a necessary, productive act of self-preservation, you slowly rewrite the neural code. Your worth is not on the line. The final step is to move from theory to embodied experience. Schedule small, intentional acts of rest and commit to being fully present for them. 5 minutes of staring out the window, a cup of tea, with no phone. Feel the guilt arise, acknowledge it, and then gently return your attention to the sensation of the sun, the taste of the tea. Don't fight the guilt, outlast it. With each practice, you strengthen the muscle of simply being. You are collecting evidence for your nervous system that the world does not end when you pause, that you are still safe, still worthy. This is how you dismantle the guilt, not through a grand battle, but through 1,000 small moments of choosing kindness over criticism, presence over productivity, and ultimately, choosing yourself over a punishing, outdated story of what it means to be valuable. The guilt you feel when you rest is not a personal failing. It is the echo of a culture that has confused human value with economic output. You have been taught to apologize for your own humanity, for your need to recharge, dream, and simply be. But your worth is not a transaction. It is your birthright. Overcoming this guilt is not about learning to rest better. It is about learning to see yourself differently, as a being whose existence is justification enough. Each time you choose rest without apology, you chip away at an ancient, oppressive lie. You declare that you are more than what you produce. You are not a machine for doing. You are a universe for being. Let your rest be a quiet revolution, a daily act of reclaiming the peace that has always belonged to you.